Hello everybody and welcome back to another Bay 12 Games Future of the Fortress read-along. In this video, I will be reading the Future of the Fortress posts, posted on the Bay 12 forums. This is sort of like a community brainstorming session that is posted once a month by Tarn Adams. It's where the community communicates and chats back and forth, and they do a little bit of future brainstorming. There's some current questions, as well as some far-off future stuff, usually. So, let's dive in and start off with the Bay 12 Games report, which was posted on May 9th. And Tarn writes, "We've got the Adventure Mode beta up on Steam, and that'll make its way over to a full, premium, and classic once it's ready. There are several menus we've got left to do, and we're also going to add the new Chosen and Hero stuff. It shouldn't take forever, but the Deity and Demigod dungeon bits will take some percolating. I just cleaned up the Barter menu yesterday, and we'll probably clean up the Shops bit next. Should have more information on art and music soon as we reconvene after my late April, early May break. Everything is still going well over in Salesland. We're down to 8K copies in February, up to 16 in March, and returning to 13K in April. And the Adventure Beta didn't move things much, but it was pretty low-key, which is just as well since there are menus left to add." The first question comes in from A Curious Cat, and they say, "With regards to the new forums, are you planning on just updating bay12forums.com to use HTTPS, or are you moving the forums so that they are under the bay12games.com in order to take advantage of the fact that bay12games.com is already set up to use HTTPS? If the latter, is there anything that'll be done to avoid breaking links on other websites? I know you can just have the main page of the old forums redirect to the new forums, but can the server be set up so that if someone tries to directly access a specific post in the old forums, it'll automatically redirect them to the same post on the new forums?" And Tarn's response is, "I think we're going to set up HTTPS for bay12forums.com. The URLs should remain unchanged." The next question comes in from A Buttery Mess, and they say, "Is Dwarf Fortress now just Dwarf Fortress officially, or is it still officially Slaves to Ormok, God of Blood, Chapter 2, Dwarf Fortress? Or is the latter just for the free ASCII version? Will you ever publish any more crayon art? Do you ever bust the crayons out when conceptualizing new features, creatures, or objects?" And Tarn's response is, "Dwarf Fortress is increasingly official for all versions. Yeah, the free version is also using it, but the README still uses the Armok title. I know that CRPG Addict uses the title screen documentation and box cover, something like that, and picks the winner 2 out of 3 to handle inconsistencies. We don't have a box cover, so right now it's a 50-50 tie. We never used crayons for concepts. Those were tablets, which are just pencil or ink." The next is kind of a double question from Rumrusher and Lamund, so let's get to it. Rumrusher asks, "Having now thought about this, if Premium Adventure Mode is getting a soundtrack, is the classic build of Adventure Mode going to stay silent, or is there going to be like a Toady 1 Original Adventure Mode classic track for that also?" And then Lamund also tosses in a suggestion, which is, it might be fun to add lo-fi chiptune versions of the music for classic, but understandable if that might be too much work. And Tarn's response is, "I'm not planning to make any more music myself at this point. There's a lot of regular work to do." The next question comes in from Tranquil River Giant, and they say, "Are there plans to implement schisms, civil wars, as part of the villain's arc? It would make sense that parts of the kingdom may rebel against a usurper. It may also help prevent snowballing in World Gen. It would also be interesting if the different sides had opposing preferences, like blue versus red clothing, or cow symbols versus eagle symbols, and different religious sects." And Tarn's response is, "Doing full breaks or merges or civilizations has always been held back by the entity code, and was going to be part of the entity rewrite stuff, which is now going to be done in smaller pieces. We have coups as the official villain plot and schisms planned as a religious feature, and the old insurrections as mentioned. There are lots of things pointing this way, but the main work to be done involves just allowing entity structures to be more flexible." Since it was Tarn's birthday, Eric Blank asks if Tarn got any nice presents. And Tarn's response is, "I did! I got a knit frog with a knit sweater. Otherwise, it was a low-key birthday focused on food. The next is a double question from DPH Kraken and Doran the First. So let's start off with Kraken's question, where they say, the Adventure Mode soundtrack is fire. My compliments to the chefs. But I checked the RAWs and didn't find any tokens for it. It looks like the playing logic is hard-coded due to the dynamic mixing. Will we be able to add our own music and sounds to Adventure Mode eventually? And Doran adds, what cues certain music tracks to play in Fortress Mode? I know the song Vile Force of Darkness plays when a siege arrives, but when, for example, does Death Spiral get triggered? And will there be similar cues in Adventure Mode? And Tarn's response is, we're waiting for the work to settle down before we come up with a raw format. The adventure music is not yet complete. Right now it just plays songs randomly. And we're going to set up cues. The Fortress Mode cues are all in the existing raw files that DPH Kraken linked. And I don't recall exactly, but the Death Spiral event relates to a number and or percentage of citizen resident deaths in a short period of time. The next question comes in from DickButtDeGreat, and they say, do doors play different sounds when they're opened in Adventure Mode depending on the material the doors are made out of? Interesting if true, but if the answer to the question is yes, do soap doors specifically have their own sound effect? And if the answer to the question is also yes, then why? And where did you even get the sound? Did you and or someone else actually try to make a door out of actual soap, smoosh together, and then have Three Toe open it while Putnam is sat and recorded with a directional mic? Because I'd have mad respect for that. And Tarn's response is, Parker Burt did most of the sound effects for Adventure Mode. I have literally no idea how they did them, but there are lots of them, and they are cool. And we did get a bit carried away with the materials. The next question comes in from Salist, and they say, could an option be added to the character creation, maybe in a debug section, to force change the random indexes in the graphics files? Talking about the common random part index, and some UI that shows the ID and a number field clamped to go from 1 to whatever the max was set to. It would make creating highly customizable and modded races way nicer. For example, I could let players pick a preferred clothing color option, or pick a tail color, and type, and wing color, etc. And Tarn's response is, I want to do an appearance customizer, as in many games, at some point, which should cover everything. The next question is from NMJ, and they say, I'm a big fan of AD&D's Underdark, and I think Dwarf Fortress does a fantastic job of creating cavern layouts and featuring a subterranean ecology that rivals what is described in TSR's books. Currently, subterranean animal people in Dwarf Fortress serve a similar role to D&D, Kuo Toa. With the upcoming map rewrite, do you plan to include exclusively subterranean civilizations that might fulfill the similar roles to Dark Elves or Dark Dwarves? If so, would these be distinct races, or would they simply be Elven and Dwarven civilizations whose inhabited possesses malevolent personality traits, like goblins do? And Tarn's response quotes DPH Kraken, so I will read its response first. And it says, one of the ideas mentioned with the myth generator was generating variants of existing creatures with mythic properties. That way, you could not just have your Dark Dwarves and Dark Elves, but Dark Humans, Dark Gorlak, Trillia from Grace, and whatever other raw-defined creatures in your world get any number of thematic prefixes. The way that creatures are set up currently, having more goblin-like personalities, would partly be done on a creature level. It's not just a societal one. Having more cultural variants between different civilizations of the same race would be cool, but their society is organized around a mythic attribute, in this case, evil and darkness. Then the prefix would allow for the player to better distinguish between a Dark Dwarven Fortress and a Dwarven Fortress. And Tarn's response is, DPH Kraken is encouraging me to add an incorruptible tag to Gorlax, and the map and entity rewrite stuff was finally going to get us a better underground civs. A lot is missing to make it work. We want Gorlax to work, we want underground animal people to work, including things like people which have never worked, which could be really interesting with their own cave layouts and more proper cast usage and such. The next question comes in from Yal, and they say, I noticed some portraits are inconsistent with the world sprites for dwarves. Usually this is seen in hair color. Is it just shades like saffron are yet to get dwarf portraits and will in the future, or is the system intended to work by approximating an array of in-text hair colors to, say, a single dwarf off-white? And Tarn's response is, we're hoping to get the full palettes, yeah, but they take time. The hair is especially inconsistent, yeah. I might be sitting on a fix for that, which will at least line it up with the portraits. And I'm always one step behind the artists, especially for the beta. Question from Dathan, and they say, any news on the Mac version? And Tarn quotes a few comments as well as also responding where he says, Mac will be back once adventure mode is done. Next question comes in from a Spatula66, and they say, are there any plans to overhaul the small-scale layered creature sprites in the future with new capabilities that came with procedural portraits? Missing body parts, paralyzation, etc. Additionally, I've noticed that NPCs never wear any headwear, except for masks and face veils, and never wear loincloths or thongs. What? I've seen that. This is new since the Steam release. I assumed it was intentionally added to reduce clutter, but it is a bit odd and makes kobolds always have bad thoughts for having no pants. If this is changed, I think that kobolds should be given sandals too, to make them not get bad thoughts for having no footwear. Are you playing a modded race? What's going on here? And Tarn's response is, yeah, it's on the list. And a lot of palletized art is already done. I don't recall a headwear change. The planes entity has all the types in there, including the pants one as well. And dwarves have loincloths listed. They do wear loincloths, yes. And are things not spawning correctly? Well, I don't know. I think what they're talking about is maybe playing as kobolds or playing as kobolds in adventure mode, but I'm not totally sure about this one. Please leave a comment down below if you know what they're talking about. The next question comes in from Roque, and they say, I wonder if it's possible, in theory, to send a squad of dwarves on a mission outside my fort to demand or raid an enemy village, and being able to join them in combat when I unretire an adventurer, or if I create a new adventurer in the target village and help them defend against the squad that is on the way. I can make the unretire or creation of new venturers simulation progress at the start to be 1 day with DF Hack, as the 2 weeks always are much more time than the travel time to the site. Even with that, would my squad actually reach the site if I could be there with my adventurer waiting? Or is the mission all abstract math behind the scenes and nothing would physically happen if I were there observing? What about if I leave the squad member behind to be the ruler of a new site? I guess he would be there, and I would be able to find the dwarf. And Tarn's response is, I have literally no idea what happens to squads on missions when you retire. If they aren't otherwise handled, they should just continue on their way with the same army controller, which means they do their thing. But most of their things aren't actually programmed in adventure mode, so you wouldn't get to see them do anything zoomed up. That's all former army arc and current piecemeal stuff, getting to the zoomed in army stuff. And you should be able to find administrators you leave in fort mode, or their occupiers, and some artifact seekers also hunt for quite a while, and might even be findable with a 2-week calendar. The next is a multi-parter from Big, which I've split up for your convenience, so I won't be reading their name, but I will be reading the questions separately. They say, one thing I noticed from the current version of the beta for adventure mode is we don't have progress bars for skills anymore, like the old version. Will those eventually be re-added? And Tarn's response is, yeah. Part 2. Since priorities are currently in flux regarding what gets implemented next, what are the chances of one of the updates following Adventure Mode's release this year or next that we will be able to purchase houses and plots of land in towns? It was on the old to-do list, and it would be a nice variation on the base building that existed in the old version with building our own mead halls. And Tarn's response is, the priorities are in flux, and I don't know the chances. Finishing the menus and getting the new deity and tutorial stuff in is the current focus. Are towns going to get any new kinds of buildings, features, organizations? previously, libraries and guild halls in towns didn't do much, and it would be cool to see them have more of their own little quest types, if possible, be joinable factions like mercenary companies are. And Tarn's response is, temples will be the first focused, most likely, after shops are fixed, because they relate to the sure additions. Part 4 of the question, will random edible leaves picked from the ground still be worth a small amount of money in trading? Stuff like lettuce and whatnot. In early versions, you could pay for your in-room with lettuce leaves in a quick pinch. And Tarn's response is, I haven't changed anything. It seems like it could afford to be tightened up, but who knows how much that will happen. I do think that the leaves shouldn't be infinite, because right now you can just sit there picking spinach for all eternity, which would mean that would be very overpowered. But like, you know, maybe like let us pick 4 or 5 leaves. The next question comes in from Viridium, and they say, ever since the villain's release, there has been an event where a villain can send people to corrupt your dwarves and steal artifacts of yours, which is great flavor. But for some reason, it seems to be abnormally common. I'm talking hundreds of historical figures coming from afar in Legends mode almost the instant it is made, for me a lot of the time. This results in the majority of your guests being thieves, which both means you won't get many regular visitors and you'll need to seal away your artifacts 100% of the time or disallow visitors. Or if you want regular visitors, just get rid of your artifacts. I'd guess this would be one of the things looked at when Villains is revisited, and probably just a side effect of it not being finished, right? And Tarn's response is, yeah, we postponed villain completion right as the heists were being finished, so it's not surprising the frequencies are messed up. The next question comes in from Lawnmower Man, and they say, are there any plans to make walls and raised bridges destructible by enemies? It is ridiculous that a single wall tile or a raised bridge can be completely neutralize almost any threat from outside. The defense of the fortress is now so simple that it is difficult to lose for fun. And Tarn quotes Eric Blank, so I will read their post first, and they say, there are, including also tunneling and sapping and ladders and siege towers to go over the walls, and siege weapons to destroy them, but it's all a long ways off. I found a neat little circumvent it and annoy the player into coming outside. Interactions that don't require a line of sight to the target, and thus can apply effects to your dwarves from anywhere on the map, as long as the source creature lives. You can make dwarves slowly go insane or become progressively sicker. It's diabolical. Well, that seems like an interesting mod. The next question comes in from Christoph PL, and they say, some months ago I noticed that the soundtrack DLC on Steam only contains low-quality MP3 files, whereas Bandcamp release has FLAC files available. The recently released Adventure Mode soundtrack DLC has the opposite problem. It includes the chunky gigabyte-sized uncompressed WAVs, which I feel is way overkill for a soundtrack release. But, of course, so much better than just the original's MP3s still. Is there a chance that the original soundtrack will get waves too? Or that both of the releases will get FLAC files? I imagine that the former would be better, as it would unify the releases and finally have an easy way for anyone who wants to convert waves to FLAC themselves. I just had a question. This is me talking, not the question here. Why is there so many issues with, like, soundtrack releases on Steam? Why isn't it just, like, a standard, like, give one of every format, download them? I feel like this is a Steam problem almost more than it is a, like, developer problem. Anyway, let's read the response. Tarn's response is, I'll have to ask KitFox. The MP3 and FLAC thing was a condition of the sound people. But if that's out of the window, then I have no idea what the current conditions are. I'll get back to you when I hear. And that brings us to the end of this month's Future of the Fortress read-along. Once again, if you would like to take part in these conversations, you can do that down in the link in the description of this video. And also, I just want to humble brag for a second. Recently, that being the day I recorded this, I took part in the Hot Potato Charity Marathon for Dwarf Fortress. It's an event that happens for RimWorld and for Dwarf Fortress once a year. It's run by my stream team, and we raise money for charity. It's essentially just a Succession Fort charity marathon. This year, we raised just over $25,000 for Doctors Without Borders. And if you're watching this video right now and would like to toss in a late donation, I'll attach that little sneaky link in the description. Also, the animated shorts that were made by a friend of mine, Fog, are now available for viewing on this YouTube channel. So, if you missed those, they're kind of a doozy. I recommend giving them a view. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you like to support this kind of content on this channel, you can do that via my Patreon or by checking out my streams. I stream on this YouTube channel as well as twitch.tv/BLINDIRL. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope I'll see you in the next one.